Hi, I'm Sharon Smallwood, and together with my good friend and colleague Phil Gordon, we're very pleased to be bringing you the Whitsunday People video podcast. Our first 5 podcasts, of which this is one, are connected. They might be 5 very different women, but they're all working towards the same cause, which is our inaugural Team Whitsundays Dancing CEOs raising funds and awareness for Women's Legal Service Queensland. I do need to let you know that this contains themes around domestic and family violence. And if you or anyone you know is triggered by these themes or needs to speak to a professional, please follow the help links in the podcast description. We do very much hope that you find these women's stories engaging, inspiring, and informative. Welcome to the show. Well, welcome back to our Whitsunday People video podcast, where myself and Phil Gordon from Riptide Creative bring you stories from the people who really make our community what it is. And right now I'm sitting here with the lovely Kate Purdie, who is the CEO of Coral Sea Marina. So Kate, there's a few things about you that I've gathered to just sort of say as a bit of an introduction. You were appointed as the general manager of the then Able Point Marina. So where we're sitting right now used to be called Able Point Marina because this was Able Point. That was back in 2018. You've been instrumental in the development of the business to form Coral Sea Marina Resort, which is what it is now. And I remember the rebranding journey. That happened in 2019. And in 2020, in the middle of the C word pandemic, that's when you were promoted to the role of CEO.
Yes.
And you're also now a CEO of a different sort as one of the Whitsundays inaugural team of dancing CEOs, which is something we're going to talk about more in the course of this conversation. Fundraising and soon to be dancing in support of Women's Legal Service Queensland. So where I'd really like to start is that I've had a look at your CV and it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
You hold an MBA and you've also held senior leadership positions at multiple international media groups. You've lived in New York, Los Angeles, Paris, London.
And the Whitsundays.
And now the Whitsundays. But wow, that's... How did all that even come to be? Take me back to when you were a schoolgirl. What was going through your mind? Where did you want to go?
My parents always said, spread your wings and fly. That's what they told us all. And we did. And I suppose that's really where that love of travel and seeing the world came from. For me personally, I really looked up to my father, and he was a big philanthropist, and he always said the real definition of success is doing both well and good. So you can do well in business or whatever you choose to pursue from a professional perspective, but it's important to remember that you always do good as well, meaning giving back in some way, trying to make the world a better place.
What did your dad do?
He was a teacher. He was a music conductor. He taught choir. He taught, they put on plays, not Broadway, but musicals and that sort of thing. And but he was also the choir director at the church, and he was always fixing things for people and fixing boats. He was a big sailor. He loved to sail, and we'd be out on the water. He would say, "We are living," and he just had this great
where was
love
this?
of life. Long Island Sound in New York.
Okay, so you were born and raised in New York.
In New York, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I suppose it all comes from my parents. They traveled to Ethiopia in the first Peace Corps with JFK.
Wow.
And so they lived in Africa, and they traveled all around after that. And it was those kinds of stories that we just really knew from a very young age, that the world was a very big place and a very diverse place, and that we were incredibly fortunate in terms of where we were growing up, and that there were always, when people say they're starving children in Africa if kids don't eat their dinner, my parents had actually lived there and seen that firsthand. So I think we were really fortunate to have parents who encouraged us to spread our wings and fly. That's what they always said. Yeah.
And what did your mum do? What was her background?
My mom ran a legal firm. And when she retired, she actually did what she'd always wanted to do, which was, my parents were quite older parents, and I was the youngest in our family. So when she was in high school, it was uncommon for women to go to university. But she went when she retired, and she became an author, and she wrote a column for the newspaper, and she graduated from university, top of her class, at the age of 70.
That's
So
fantastic.
put us all through college first before she went herself.
And ran a law firm.
Yes, and my dad was a teacher, but also he had his master's in guidance counseling. So I think that was probably why they were always sort of molding us from a very young age. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your vision, other than to spread your wings and see the world and appreciate that the world was a big place and there was a lot for you to learn? What was your vision for yourself? Where did you see yourself going? Where did you want to go? What?
I always felt like I belonged on the West Coast. You know, I grew up in New York, but I loved all things beach. So in my family, everyone did a different thing. My brother was a skier, my sister was a sailor, and I was a swimmer on the swim team from a very young age and swam all through high school and university. And so I just love that. I became an ocean lifeguard. Yes, so I loved all things sort of the water. Anything in the water is sort of a fish. Loved swimming growing up. That was my sport. At university as well, became an ocean lifeguard. I was a swim team coach. So I really wanted to live in California. But I also wanted to be different than my parents. They were big philanthropists, always giving everything away. You know, we'd give them nice presents for Christmas, maybe new luggage or something, and they would give it like to the outreach center. Um, and I guess I sort of wanted to focus on the well, on the doing well part, and then do good, rather than just always doing good for everyone. So I decided to go to business school, and I went to business school at the University of Southern California, which is in Los Angeles, and moved out there and did that and started working for a photography agency called Corbis, which was owned by Bill Gates. And that was, to me, such a dream job because I absolutely love photography, and I was finally on the West Coast, and, you know, I bought a convertible, and in the morning we would get up and drive up Pacific Coast Highway and go surfing on the way to work and then go to university at night. And it was just a really fantastic lifestyle and sort of what I had always thought that I wanted. So I think I was just sort of searching for endless summer, maybe.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit endless summer. I'm getting that kind of picture in my head of where you were. What that makes me think, though, is that it's almost like, say, you'd almost found your nirvana. So how did that move on from there?
Lots of things happened, but when I finished my MBA, I got promoted within the company, so I moved to Seattle. And from Seattle, I was moved then to Paris. When I was in Paris, I ran marketing for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I was very much constantly on the move. And
what was your job title? What was your role?
I started off in the what was called royalty-free division, so it was stock photography.
Yeah.
And that's licensing photographs for magazines, books, things like that.
Yeah.
And then I moved on to start the artist representation part of the business, which was actually having bespoke photographers do photo shoots for companies. Say like Louis Vuitton wants to have a photograph that no one else could ever purchase and use for their ad campaign. So everything is done bespoke. And I was tasked with starting that artist representation in multiple countries all around the world. And from there, I sort of got poached into marketing, which was where I had started.
In the same company?
In the same company. And then I did the marketing, and that was when I met my late husband, who was in charge of sales. So
Right.
He was divorced. He had 2 young children. He lived in the London office, but we ended up having to travel around to a lot of the same places. And that's how I ended up in London. I got relocated there. And obviously, because he had 2 young children, he wasn't going to come to New York. So ended up in London, got married and bought a house and had a baby. And then, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with an incurable form of cancer. So at 36, I was a new mom living in a foreign country. And I suddenly became not only a working mom, but also a caregiver and a medical advocate. And if you've ever helped anyone who is unwell, you know that there's a huge research component of trying to find out what the best treatments are and organizing appointments and that sort of thing.
And also the advocacy part, when you say that, being a medical advocate, because I remember when my mum was diagnosed with cancer and going through a lot of things with her, and it wasn't that she wasn't compos mentis or capable of saying things for herself, but sometimes when you're the person struggling with the disease, you are not actually able to advocate effectively enough for yourself, and you need all the help you can get. So,
Well, and I think you need to focus on staying positive and getting better.
yes,
Right? That's where your energy needs to
Yeah.
go, not on arguing to get an appointment sooner
Yes.
or booking flights to go to the best place or anything
Yeah.
like that.
So suddenly your world, which had been going on quite an amazing trajectory,
Yeah.
changed
I had
quite a
actually
bit.
just started working for the Discovery Channel in London, and that was a real
Okay, now I'm
change
jealous.
for
Just,
me.
I mean, I'm not obviously I don't want to take away from the tragedy of what was happening, but that's Awesome.
Yeah, when I got that job, my late husband said, "You can't do that. It's an hour and 45-minute drive from here." And I was like, "So?" It's the Discovery Channel,
What were you
Um,
doing then?
Discovery Networks International, communications and then marketing as well. And that was Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So, lots of great opportunities. That was Animal Planet and the Discovery Channel, but it's obviously a much bigger company than that. And that was fantastic. But I did not return there after Ivan got sick. So it was slightly short lived. I guess it was 2 years there. Yeah.
That's heartbreaking. You must have, I mean, I know you had more important things in many ways
Yeah.
on your mind, but still to have been so driven and come so far and then have to take a step down. How did you cope with all that?
I think when you're going through something like that, you don't have time to think about that or to
Yeah.
think about yourself. You just sort of have to take it one day at a time and do what needs to be done. And that's what I did. I had to also be that brave, smiling face for our children.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's a really hard thing to do when everything's sort of falling apart all around you, to have to put that brave face on. And I think that that's something I felt like I could relate to. I'm sure it's not the same at all. But when you think about women impacted by domestic violence, just that having to carry on for your children, for the people around you who need you, and despite whatever it is that you're facing, is a hard thing to do.
Taking a giant step forwards, obviously domestic violence is the and support for domestic violence is what Women's Legal Service Queensland is all about, and that's what you're currently now involved in.
Yes.
But just stepping back to that point in time, so well, actually, I guess that they're both quite interrelated, aren't they? Because in your role now, I remember you saying to me about how you came to be a dancing CEO in the first place, and I think what had happened, you were in your role now as the CEO of the marina, or perhaps it was back when you were the GM, but in whatever capacity, you were approached to give donate a prize for the raffle, weren't you, by Caitlin Aslett Collins? So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about what happened there.
When just to go back, when my husband passed away, a few of his best friends and I started an organization for him in his memory called Go For It. He was this like larger than life character, and people always came to him for advice, and that was always his advice was, I think you should just go for it. So we called it the Go For It Foundation, and we raised quite a bit of money to help people impacted by adversity, whether that was injury or illness or perhaps the death of a parent. And, the whole point of that, I think, was one, to keep his memory alive and sort of keep that light shining, but two, to show the children that bad things happen. And it's a horrible fact of life, but bad things happen to people all the time. And you can either let that define you and destroy you, or you can rise above it and try and make something good come from it. And so I guess I've always had that in the back of my mind, that when we relocated here, that carried on, but we became obviously less directly involved in it. So anytime anything would come up here at the marina where we could be involved in some kind of a philanthropic way, I would always speak to the owner, Paul Darazet, and talk to him about what we might be able to do. And that's could be something to do with the environment or sailability or the children's sporting organizations, or, people are constantly asking for support. And it's lovely that he always says, if we're doing well, then we can help. And I think that's fantastic.
Doing well,
really
doing
aligned
good.
with my own personal
Yeah.
values. And I really appreciate that. I think that going back to your question about like, what do I want to do? I wanted to go to business school because I wanted to have some power. I wanted to have power to affect positive change. And I thought the way to do that was to become someone who people would listen to, And so
Yeah.
kind of coming full circle to your question, when Caitlin called and asked for a donation for the Dancing CEOs Prize, I thought, oh, what's Dancing CEOs? And I looked it up and I watched the video of this woman telling her story about an incident of domestic violence, which included her children. And it just absolutely gave me the chills and just brought me right back to that moment of sitting in the doctor's office with a 6-month-old baby in my lap, having him say, you have 3 years to live, to my husband. And just sort of the world stops.
Yeah.
And nothing else around you matters. You can't hear it. You almost go into this trance.
Yeah.
Everybody else is still moving, and your world has just stopped. And I really felt that sitting at my desk, and tears are just streaming down my face. And I was just
Wow.
thinking, yes, we absolutely need to support this in any way we can. I never thought that I would be one of the dancing CEOs. That thought honestly didn't cross my mind, but I certainly went straight to the owner of the business and said, I think this is a great opportunity and something that we should absolutely support.
What was it about that video that you watched that took you back to that awful moment, that time where time stood still?
I guess if you think about everyday life, we're all going through the motions and we get caught up on silly things like, oh, it's raining and now this is happening or that's happening. And then you watch the news and you see wars and you see women running with their children in their arms, just running literally for their lives. And I think those things now really impact me greatly. I can't watch the news about war without tears streaming down my face. My son is always looking over at me to see if I'm crying and to make sure I'm okay. Because I think those raw emotions, that never goes away once you've been through any kind of trauma. I was widowed at 41, and that's quite a traumatic experience. And I think once you've been through that, it's always right below the surface. So your question was, why did it bring me back to that moment? I don't think I can answer why. I think I'm probably always on some level just beneath the surface in that moment. I don't think you can ever lose that. But you can grow and build on top of it, and that the grief doesn't get smaller, but the life that you build around it becomes bigger.
I remember having a conversation with you about this when you first sort of opened up, when you became a dancing CEO and you opened up about the why for you and what had happened and going back to that moment. And I do remember you saying to me that one of the things you got from, I think it was that particular woman who was on the video, or certainly a story of a domestic violence survivor that you'd looked into, that you related to that sense of helplessness, of not being in control of anything.
Yes.
Were there other feelings that because I think what resonated with me when you said that was that we can often look at causes when people come to us and ask for help. And while we can be sympathetic and empathetic, sometimes you can be more empathetic about something if you have that shared experience, if you've lived it. And of course, you and I are both lucky enough that we've never experienced domestic violence. Neither have any of your teammates in Dancing CEOs in that way. And so what really struck me was that you could relate to the feeling, even though it was a completely different cause.
And I think I can relate to the feeling, but I don't honestly know because I've never had the feeling and I've never really spoken one-on-one with anyone who has. Even through this journey, we had someone stand up at the orientation and talk about her experience, but I've never had that personal conversation. Maybe someone who's been impacted by domestic violence would say that's not the same, But I guess, to answer your question, when you watch the news about war, that's people purposely doing harmful things to other people, right? It's senseless. Sometimes it's for a cause, but it's still senseless to harm each other. Cancer harms people, but you can't always do anything about it, right? Natural disasters harm people. It's not always in our control. But domestic violence is something that we should actually be able to stop, right?
Like to have some control over.
Yeah. And so I guess
society.
I could relate in the fact of being helpless, of not being able to control what's happening to you, and of your whole world just sort of shattering in an instant, right? But what really upset me and what made me want to be involved is the fact that this is a solvable problem. This is absolutely a solvable problem. So while I've done lots of triathlon fundraisers for cancer research, and there's lots of cancer research, in fact, what my husband died from, there are now treatments for that. This is something that wasn't really on my radar. I had no idea how much domestic violence there was in Australia or in Queensland. To be honest, it was quite a foreign concept to me. But the fact that people are harming each other when we don't need to do that, that isn't put upon us, that's a solvable problem, and I like to solve problems. So, finding the power to affect positive change in this regard was saying to my boss, I'd like to do this and represent our company. And, would you support it? And he's been incredible in saying, yeah, absolutely, this is a great cause and there's a lot that we can do. And he's donated quite a lot and allows me the time, affords me the time to do it. And, in some small way, hopefully, we are starting to have some impact on that solvable problem.
Yeah. So going back to that time, because obviously there's a whole journey that went from becoming widowed to being in London.
Yes.
To coming to the Whitsundays and coming here and being in this position where this could happen to you. What happened from there when you're left as a single mum in a foreign country?
Yeah.
Where to from there? What did you do?
Well, I was the, president of the Parents and Friends Association at school, so I carried on doing that, and we started the Go For It Fund, and I carried on doing that.
And you were still working?
I went back to work and had incredible support from friends and family there, and such a strong community. We lived in a small village outside of London, just an incredible community, and Ivan had such a strong network of friends as well who really wrapped themselves around us and made sure that we were as okay as we could be. But it is sometimes a bit dreary in England, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And if you weren't born there and you didn't grow up with that, the fact that carries on well into the summer sometimes is hard. And I suppose...
They use lots of words beginning with D on the weather reports, by the way. It's like dark, dismal, dreary.
Damp. Depressing.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm hearing you. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
So my long story, going back to university, I studied abroad here on the Gold Coast. And when I left, my mom said, whatever you do, just don't fall in love with an Australian. So you come home. And I did. I was a good girl. I listened. But my older sister came to visit, and my mom forgot to tell her that. And we actually came here to Whitsundays to go sailing on a maxi, and my sister met, who's now her husband, on the boat. And so she stayed. So going through all of this, she was a huge support to me, and she would fly to England and help. And after Ivan passed away, she said, you need to come and visit, you remember how much you love it here. And so Lucas and I came for about 5 weeks over the summer.
And Lucas is your son?
Lucas is my son.
Yeah.
And he was 7 by then. So it had been 2 years. I was still, very much grieving. But we came and we did everything that you could do. My sister's an incredible tour guide. So we went everywhere, Maggie Island, all the islands, bareboating, Yungala, platypuses, all of it. And it just reminded me of California and of that life that I had before life took over.
Beach, ocean.
Yeah, and sailing and, sort of our upbringing and also what I had gravitated towards as a young adult. And Lucas was building a sandcastle one day and he looked up and said, I wish we could live in Early Beach, Mommy. He hates when I tell that story, but it's true. And I thought, why not? Let's try and move forward. So we came and then
so you obviously packed up London.
Went home, yes.
Yeah.
And fortuitously met my sister and her husband's friend, Bruce. And when we came back, got together with Bruce and sort of love story started from there. And we've just been together ever since. And we were really just starting. You don't start over. You can never start over, and you don't want to. You don't want to leave behind all the people that you love, but you do need to move forward, and you need to find the strength to do that. And for me, to be the best mom that I could, I needed to be in a place where I could be the best version of myself.
Yes.
And that place was not England.
No.
And it was really important to have that support of my family around too, and the people who had really been there as Lucas was a young boy.
Yeah, knowing you as I do and knowing England, I can say you definitely made the right choice. I can't see you staying in England, but
yeah.
So your personal life was all kind of coming together, but obviously you came here and it's a very different place work-wise than everywhere you'd be. I mean, Paris, London, New York, Seattle. So Whitsunday. So what were you looking for? I
wasn't thinking, Sharon. I was going for it. That's
Yeah.
what I was doing. And sometimes that requires an element of non-thinking.
Yes, absolutely.
So, look, I knew I could do lots of things. I would have loved to have just gone and worked out on a boat on the reef every day, but being a mom of a young child and having a professional background, I knew I needed to find some kind of a job doing something business orientated. And I didn't really know what that was going to be. But funnily enough, an advertisement came up for the role running the marina. And one of my sister's friends said, "You should go for that." And I said, "Why? Because we grew up sailing? What experience do I have that's relevant?" And she said, "Business is business, isn't it?" And I thought, well, I might as well try, right? So I did. I came and I did a lot of research and I came very prepared. I sort of followed the same methodology I would have in my former roles. And I think that stood me in good stead when I interviewed, and that all went well. And then I sort of jumped into this role about 6 months into moving here, April 2018.
Okay, so we've spoken before, and I've been at other at groups and things where you've spoken, like our women's personal development group. We both
Yes.
go to the same one with good old Judy Porter. Give her a bit of a plug for her
Shift.
shift organisation. But I remember you speaking at one at the end of last year where we were talking about how the marine industry is quite male dominated, and so you'd come into what had previously been quite a male dominated role and whatever, and that being,
Yeah.
but that was not what that wasn't
What anyone
about
cared
wasn't
about.
yeah, and it wasn't why you got the job, or there were many more important things than that, but that obviously was a factor. And it was an environment, like you said, you didn't know much about the marine industry, and so you're walking into something completely new. So, and in your introduction, I sort of mentioned that you were transformative, or you've been involved in the transformation of the business. So tell me about that journey for you, walking in
Sure.
here, from the day you walked in, what it was like, to what it's like now, and what you feel that you and your team have achieved.
Sure. For me, when I came to do the interview, the night before, the owner was giving a speech here, actually. And it was, I think, to the Rotary Club, or the Rotary Club had organized it. And I had been really following online what different businesses were doing in the area. And Whitsunday Escape, one of the bareboat companies, was doing the Last Straw campaign, and they were really leading that. And I had written to them and asked if they needed anyone to help. And they said that they had it all under control and it was great. And so I expected that the marina would, of course, be involved with that, given that that business is based here at the marina. And when I came in to attend that talk, I went up to the bar to get a drink and I was handed a glass with a plastic straw in it. And I thought, well, that's sort of odd. So I sat down and I listened. But the next day in the interview, I was sort of questioned, "Well, what do you know about marine infrastructure, or what do you know about dredging, or all sorts of things," to which obviously I responded nothing. And the owner sort of said, "Well, with all due respect, like, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I think that sometimes it takes someone looking at a business through a different lens to affect positive change." For example, and then I just talked about the Last Straw campaign and some of the leadership that was happening within businesses in the marina that the marina wasn't necessarily a part of, or even really should have been driving,
Embracing, yeah.
in my regard, embracing, but also initiating. And he was quite open to that. And I talked a lot about my love of diving and the reef and how important it is, because he's invested so much in these assets here, the marina and now the resort as well. But these assets only retain their value if the natural assets that surround them retain their value. People don't come here because the marina is world class. They come here because they want to see the Whitsundays.
Correct.
Marina
Yeah.
is a lovely benefit. You
Yeah.
can have world class facilities and deliver an outstanding experience, but the reason people are coming is out there.
Yes.
And so we have a duty of care to ensure that we're doing everything we can to help maintain the pristine natural beauty of the place. And I felt that the owner also believed that and really wanted to make the place better, not just on the water, but the town as well. And that was really aligned with my values. And so I was able to talk him into giving me a chance, really. But what people were surprised about, it wasn't that I wasn't Australian at the time, I am now, or that I didn't have marine industry experience. It was that I was a woman. And I just, to me, I grew up in New York. I had a working mother I'd been on the executive team working directly for Bill Gates when I was 30. This sounded like a very odd comment. But then you go to the industry events and you start to see that a lot of the time, and it isn't so much like that now, 8 years later.
Yeah.
The managers were the men and the women were usually in a supporting role in marketing or business development. I have quite a few industry colleagues now who are the leaders and who are women. So it's nice to see that change is occurring. But we also have an incredible team here of experts in their areas. And so it's okay that I didn't have that direct experience because there are people on our team who do, and we allow them to utilize that experience and leverage that knowledge. You don't have to do everything yourself. You have
No.
to build a strong team
Yes.
of people
Yeah.
who are really capable.
Absolutely.
And there was already a very strong team here.
So utilizing the resources of that strong team and then bringing a lot of your values into the place. Obviously, there's no plastic straws anymore. But what
have we
else what else do you feel that really proud of in these years that you've been here so far?
Well, I'm really proud of the team. The team is quite different than it was before. We've really,
In what way? What's different about it now, do you think?
I think the team is now comprised of lots of individuals who are excelling in their own areas and who have that autonomy to thrive. And I think that's really important. I think that we had a lot of people who had a lot of hidden talents that just hadn't yet been uncovered. And it's been beautiful watching people grow into their roles and make those roles their own. So that's been fantastic. We've won lots of awards, and there are too many to list, to be honest. But to me, it's not really ever about the trophy. It's about who you become in the process of earning that award. And I think every member of the current team have changed and grown in the process of winning those awards. And the awards are fantastic, and it's great to have the accolades, and that certainly helps to have a strong reputation. It helps with our sales. It ultimately builds a sustainable business in terms of the revenue.
And the team's motivation as well.
Yeah, but we have greatly increased the overall revenue, but we've also done that by doing the right thing. So when COVID hit, I'm quite proud of the way that we fought, and you obviously were very instrumental in that we worked together with the operators to fight for funding for them. And we tried to do everything we could to keep every business in the marina open.
Yeah.
And, people quickly forget that, but it was a very trying time.
Yeah.
And a lot of effort went into it, and a lot of goodwill on the owner's part as well.
Yes.
We've also tried to do a lot in terms of philanthropy. So right now the team are compiling all kinds of donations that are going to go on super yachts out to Vanuatu and other islands. And we're just constantly trying to make sure that our corporate social responsibility is top of mind. And that's a lovely thing too. And the reason we're able to do that is because we're performing really well from a revenue perspective. And that's because we make smart decisions and we have strong members of the team in the really key roles that ensure that we have new vessels and returning vessels every year.
So what you're describing to me is it's that circle that's just going round and round, and it's self-perpetuating now. So it's a good, it's
doing well.
Yeah,
and
yeah. The well and good, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And I think also we've really tried to make this a very welcoming place. It always had an outstanding reputation before.
Well, not always. And Paul Darazzo would be the first to. I've sat in many of his speeches where he's actually told the story of coming here himself as a boat owner and being utterly appalled by the level of customer service or lack thereof that he received, and being determined to turn that around.
Yes.
And as somebody who is a sailor and has a boat and has utilized this facility for decades now, I'm 100% with him with what he's saying, that was the truth. And he has turned it around, and you have been a part of that too.
But I guess my point was, from when he took over, he turned it around. There was a good few years before I started where a lot of hard work was done. And the hardest work, people on the main street giving a hard time to the previous manager and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with any of that. My real task when I arrived was to ensure the profitability continued to increase so that it could continue to become one of the best marinas in the world. And that has happened. But what I really wanted to do, I grew up at a yacht club. And yacht clubs are a place, a community. We didn't have any extended family. That was our extended family. And so I wanted to try and drive an element of making this a place that felt like a home away from home, So we started the Marina Mingles and different things to try and really encourage that community building. And the Ocean Club does that as well. And I'm really proud of the work the team have done, because the one thing is they're so outstanding. You can have an idea, or we'll all talk together and brainstorm and come up with a group idea. And then they just really take it and make it something special. Now we've got marinas all over the country that are doing Marina Mingle type activities. And that's great. It's a real compliment to see. But our guests constantly say that sort of feeling is what makes them return year after year. And some of them now just stay as well.
Yes. So I was really interested in what you were saying about with your team, how you even managed to uncover people's hidden talents and that whole team building thing that you've done. How have you done that? What do you think you've implemented to bring out the best in people that perhaps they might not have even seen themselves prior? What initiatives have you
There's
taken?
not really an equation for that. I think that comes from being human, treating everyone like they're humans first and people who work here second, and then watching them and listening to them and giving them a chance to shine. And you can see where they naturally gravitate towards, and you can see positions in the business that might suit them or might suit them better. And you can, I don't know, that's just that's part of being a leader, I think, is looking hard for those diamonds in the rough and giving them that chance to shine. And they do. They're such an incredible team.
So in this whole phrase that your dad started of doing well and doing good, I'd say you're doing both now.
Thank you.
And the whole dancing CEOs thing that's come about for you, of being approached and obviously, first of all, being approached to give a prize.
Yes.
I guess there was the personal thing of doing good, having that connection, the feeling that you got from taking you back in time. How did that then go to, because we've spoken to Candice, who is the one of your fellow,
well, she's the
dancers. Well, she's the one who put it all together. So she obviously came to you and asked you if you would be one of the dancing CEOs. Tell me how that whole conversation went.
She called, and normally when she would call, it something about our sons who know each other at school. And she said, oh, I have something I wanted to ask you about. And she started talking about dancing CEOs, and I assumed that she wanted another donation for the jet raffle. So I was, quite eager to say, absolutely, I'm sure I'll have to check, but I'm sure that's something that we could support. And then she explained how she was creating this team. And then she said, no, to be one of the dancers. And I just literally did a belly laugh when I said, you have met me, right? This is pretty outside of what you would think of. In fact, everyone I've told that I'm doing it has had a bit of a belly laugh about that fact. But I was just, a month shy of turning 50. We had gotten through the sort of COVID recovery, and things at work had settled down to a bit more normality. Maybe for the first time really ever since I had started working here. My son was just that little bit older and more able to, just have more responsibility on his own. Things had just sort of come to a point where I felt like I could start giving back. And of course, the whole time I've been here, I've tried to give back in my own way, in many ways. But I hadn't really taken on any projects. I had thought about starting the Go For It Fund here. I had thought about doing lots of different things.
Something personal as opposed to something that you were doing for and through the marina, because this is about you, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm the CEO of Coral Sea Marina, and I'm representing the company. I also, when my late husband was unwell, he was a big rugby player, and he would faint a lot, and I would catch him a lot. And so I had hurt my lower back, and I'd always been quite an active person, and every time I would start to get back into it, I would hurt my lower back. And it's a very frustrating process if you've ever had an injury. And it's quite disheartening. And I had sort of just gone, okay, everybody turns 50 and this is their big thing. And I had missed the window. I was already turning 50, but I really wanted to make sure I somehow figured out how to get past that. And mostly I think it was just the cause and a genuinely kind-hearted person saying, will you go on this journey with me? How can you say no to that, right? Someone who clearly is in a position where they need to also be doing something to make a difference. That's the thing I admire most in people. I think when you've been through life and death sort of things, you really have a very high BS radar, and not a lot of time for people who aren't truly genuine or truly trying to make a difference, and very quickly endeared to people who are.
Yeah.
And you're one of those people.
Oh, thank
We
you.
were in COVID, but we were making a difference.
Yes.
It mattered what we were doing.
Absolutely. And I know that we both really believed in, and still do, in everything that we do, and have. We do share that same sort of passion for the right and the difference between
doing the right thing, being human. And I always had this expression that people say, but I would say at work when things were going wrong in media, and I would say, okay, we're not saving babies' lives here. Like, let's all just take a deep breath and figure out how to fix it. And this was actually an opportunity to save babies' lives.
Yes.
I'm not going to ever be able to go back in time and change going to business school and do something else more fulfilling. I've always been on the business route, but I've always tried to use any influence that I had through my roles to do good. And this was an opportunity to do that. And so, I couldn't really say no.
Which is much as all of that, I've got to go back to the belly laugh bit because it's the dancing, Kate. I think the reason why, because I know that for you to go and get on that stage in Brisbane, because the Dancing CEOs culminates in this dance contest in Brisbane City Hall on the 31st of May, where you have to walk out on stage in front of 1,000+ people. And I know that is going to be putting you right out of your comfort zone.
Well, see, here's another non-thinking decision, Sharon. Is that even a word, non-thinking? I am really comfortable in front of an audience. I love to talk.
There's a difference between talking and dancing.
Well, I didn't know that until the choreographer said, you've stood on the stage and talked in front of people. This is completely different. You have to move your body. And I was like, I really thought it was going to kind of be the same thing. And he was like, mm-mm. So perhaps that was an uneducated decision, but that doesn't matter. And I don't feel nervous about it. I just want to make sure that I get to a position where I'm doing it as well as I possibly can, to not let everyone else down. They're highly focused on winning, and I am not going to be the reason why we don't win. But that being said, I can barely walk in heels, and now we're going to dance in high heels. So who knows what's going to happen, but I am certainly going to put in the most effort. Candace always laughs and she says I'm a quiet achiever because I've been taking separate lessons on the side with my samba teacher.
I have no doubt that's what you've been doing.
Well, because I think I've been sitting at a desk, barely moving every day for many hours a day for the last nearly 8 years.
And I know what
that
that's
has
like.
taken a toll on me physically, no doubt. And I had to start my life over. I had to work really hard to rebuild my whole life.
Yes.
And I felt a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure to do that well. And I really did not look after myself.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought I would be someone in that position, but it happens, life happens sometimes.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because it's like counterproductive to what you're trying to do. You just said you're trying to rebuild your life, but at the same time, you're putting your own life last. And I think that's something that women often do.
Too. And I've been guilty of that. And, it shows. And when you're like creaking, standing up and you haven't actually exercised, that's not great. Yeah. I'm creaking from doing too many squats with Candace in her bar class, but but that's positive. But one really positive thing I would say for people, and it would never have occurred to me to dance, but actually when you sit and work at a desk all day long, you're so still. It's not just that you're not up walking around, you literally become like a solid, yes. And so when we went to the first class and he said we had to do this shoulder thing, and everybody else just went like bump, bump. And I was kind of like, like, how do you do that? Well, like, how do you isolate your shoulders? Well, it turns out you can isolate like every single little part of your body. And people who do salsa and samba, it's incredible to watch. So I've really been sort of reacquainting myself with the fact that movement doesn't mean that you stand up and walk.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much more to it.
Yeah.
So that's been really interesting. But the other thing is, and knock on wood, you don't hurt your back dancing. Yeah. You don't hurt your back in a bar class. You're standing up.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't hurt your back walking either.
No. And so all of these simple things, I would always sort of get back in the gym and either be swimming and doing flip turns and pushing hard off the wall, or I would be lifting weights or doing something, and every single time, like it just happened over and over. And now we started this in October. So, fingers crossed, this may well be a solution. But for people sitting at desks all day long, we joke around now and we'll have a minute where music comes on and we do a little shimmy.
Little
because
shimmy.
It's actually really good for you
Yeah.
to move your body, not just your legs.
Yeah, and not just stand. It's not just about, like you said, it's not just about standing up and walking around the room and then going back to your desk. And
Yeah.
I completely relate to that because I was in exactly the same place as you, again, approaching my 50th birthday, and I had been chained to a desk for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, they say that sitting is the new smoking.
That's it.
And
I would never smoke.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
Well, I did a very long time ago, but I got over that quite quickly. But yeah,
Being
you
a
don't,
swimmer, you
you
don't
don't
smoke.
realize that that's what you're doing to yourself. So, well, I'm really pleased that that is a something that's a personal benefit that can come from this for you, because I know that you are very selfless. And so it's really nice to see something coming back to you in an inadvertent sort of way that you might not have expected.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think for me, I needed it to be my job. It's the dancing CEOs, but I'm the CEO of Coral Sea Marina. So I take it really seriously that I have to do well at it because I'm representing all these people who work so hard here. I don't want to let them down. So to make part of my job be getting fit enough to dance on a stage, that's been a really positive thing. We have the physio come and make sure that everybody's sitting properly at their seats. And he said to me, I said, my neck hurts. And he said, well, all right, show me, look up. And I went,
So you literally
and he was like,
lifted your eyes.
yeah, no, like
Yeah.
move your head. And I could get to about here. And, that's just not okay. And so it's really opened my eyes to the fact that I need to make sure my team
Yeah.
are not doing that same thing.
Yes.
And there have been a lot of positives that have come from it in that regard as well. A lot
Yeah.
more wellness initiatives that we're trying to focus on.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and
Lead
again,
by example.
that comes back to that circle, isn't it? Because it's like healthy body, healthy mind equals healthy body. It just goes on and on and on. If you can,
well and good applies to your
Yes.
physical
absolutely.
being
I
as
love
well.
that. I'm going to
Yeah.
adopt the whole well and good thing now. So we've come to this point where, you've got this new life here. Your son's doing well. You're doing well. You've got the whole new, the marina's doing well. You've signed up to be a dancing CEO. And as part of that, because obviously it's not just about the dancing, it's about the fundraising, it's about the awareness raising.
Yeah.
And the marina under you is taking on probably the biggest event of the whole Whitsundays fundraising efforts,
Yes.
which is going to be the Epic Walk. So the Epic Walk for DV is obviously something that started in Brisbane. It's still running in Brisbane. The two events are now going to run side by side, but on the same day, same time. This is the first time it's ever come to the Whitsundays. You are hosting it here, as in at the marina. It's starting in the Coral Sea Marina Gardens. Obviously, people are walking along the Bicentennial Boardwalk, which takes them out of the marina, but it's a return trip. They're coming back here, and then all the festivities are here. So that's another big commitment on your part, on Paul's part, in terms of what the marina infrastructure, what it's been for the team's part. Everybody's really getting behind this. Tell me a little bit more about the walk and what you envisage that being, and what you want to get out there to people about the importance of coming along and being a part of it.
Sure. It is a huge effort, and it really is all being taken on by my team, in particular the marketing and business development team. But we'll all be a part of it. And we really want to paint the marina purple and have a real standout day. The timing is tricky. Normally you wouldn't put on an event like that at that time of year in the Whitsundays, right? It's either going to be very hot or very wet. But we're hoping that the people in this community are well accustomed to both of those things. People turn up every Saturday morning for park run, rain or shine. So we're really hoping that we'll get that same kind of effort on a Sunday morning. But the whole concept is really to follow that park run loop. So it's quite familiar for many people here. Not everybody goes every week, but lots of people have been once or twice. It's an easy walk. You can bring your children, you can bring your pets. There will be food, there will be entertainment. There will be a few speeches, but nothing overwhelming. The idea is just to have some good, healthy fun in the name of a really good cause that is sadly growing at an incredibly rapid rate here in Queensland, but in particular in our local community. And whilst I think there are a lot of people who are aware of it, I certainly know there are a lot of people who aren't, and I wasn't at all, at all. The numbers that have been quoted are just astounding, and I think, again, the way to solve a problem, first of all, is you have to acknowledge it. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Acknowledge
You've
it.
got to know about it. You have to know about it, acknowledge it, and then that's the way that you care to do something about it.
Yeah. And I think every business in this community can do more to focus on the well-being of the people who live here, the well-being of people who work for them, even the well-being of their customers.
Yes.
It's something that should become part of the ethos and the mentality of businesses here as well, because it's so important. And it is actually something that even the government are trying to encourage now. Well-being is the new catchphrase in terms of employment law. So,
Which is interesting when you think about how the Epic Walk was actually founded. So of the two Brendans who started it, Brendan Smith is being one who's the, I think he's the state political reporter for
right.
Channel 9, I think. Brendan Mann is the other one. Brendan Mann is the founder and director at Epic Hair. It was, what you were saying about the well-being of your customers. It was the clients. It was clients that
Right.
whose stories he was hearing, and of course he's got vast team of people who work for him. But that was one of the inspiring factors for him in becoming involved in being a dancing CEO himself when he was one, and then starting the Epic Walk. And of course, it's called the Epic Walk after his whole Epic hair
Yes,
designs
that's right.
empire. I think a lot of people are sort of thinking, aren't they, that when we say Epic Walk, they think it's going to be this huge, great big marathon.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's epic in name rather than
That's right.
nature.
We need to make sure we get that message out. We would like to see a lot more signups, and we're trying to do everything we can to encourage them. And people do tend to do that sort of at the last minute, and they might wait and see what the weather is like. But we really need to encourage people to do it, rain or shine, and to make it fun. If it's the Whitsundays on that day, then so be it. I mean, maybe we're getting all of our rain right now, so we might be in luck. By
I'd like to
the
think
end
that
of March.
we can be optimistic.
The mud may have dried out by then.
I mean, I presume, in all seriousness, there'll be some sort of wet weather contingents like tents or whatever that we can probably.
There will be some marquees.
Yeah.
But you're out in the open doing a walk.
Yes.
But as well as I do, that walking on that boardwalk in the pouring rain is actually phenomenal.
Yeah.
It can make you feel so alive.
Yeah.
It can give you that feeling that my dad always had, that we are living moment, So I think we're just gonna have to be positive, no matter come what may.
And we are. I mean, I do remember going. You spoke about the Whitsundays, and of course, years ago we had a bit of a joke about it. And I remember Kevin Collins, ironically, I think it was, leading the whole Whitsundays thing. We all walked into
Right?
into Airlie Beach in the rain. And I think if it wasn't raining, people jumped in the lagoon and threw water all over themselves. I think Phil actually filmed that as well. So we can have a bit of a laugh about the weather. We're not.
We can, and the weather at this time of year is what makes it so beautiful the rest of the year.
Absolutely.
But also, you can find those really positive things even when it's pouring, and I think that aligns really well with the message. Like, even when things are horrible, you can turn around and there's a little waterfall. There's literally a waterfall across the street from the entrance to the marina, which this isn't really a positive thing, but it's actually can be quite pretty when you look at it, and can give you a chance to just sort of stop and go, okay, it's just rain and it's going to go away. I mean, obviously, that's for us right now. People north of here are in dire straits, and that's not something to take lightly. But
we've been there too. We've been there too.
But a normal rain shower, it shouldn't be something we shy away from. It should be something we face head on, with a smile on our dials. And
you mentioned purple, because obviously purple is it's the colour of Women's Legal Service Queensland, and so therefore it's the colour that the Epic Walk has adopted. I know when you sign up and register for the walk, which we'll have to make sure that there's the links are in the descriptions of these podcasts. But when you sign up, you get given a T-shirt as part of the sign up. But I think you here in the marina, you're looking at actually turning the marina purple as well as there being a sea of purple from people in their T-shirts milling around. You've got plans for how the marina's going to look?
Just asking the people in the different businesses working there to wear their shirts. We're hoping to get a lot of our guests involved and some of the crew involved. We'll see, depending on the weather, what we can do in terms of flags and bunting. But just with the idea being that it is throughout the precinct, not just the people walking in the park, but really raising awareness. We've got hundreds of thousands of people who come through here and who will come through here in the week leading up to it. We want to ensure that there's some conversation happening about not just domestic violence and the increase in frequency of it here in Queensland, but what resources are available and why we are trying to raise money to increase the amount of resource available here in our region.
Yeah. You've also been, before we get off the subject of the walk, just to clarify. So it's the 30th of March, 6 a.m. registration for a 7:30 a.m. start. How long will the festivities go for around here? So people come and do the walk. There'll be sort of a bit of entertainment, speeches and things?
Yeah, it'll go on for a few hours. Some people will take their time. It's 2 loops, right? The park run loop. So it'll take a little bit of time for people to walk it. So we will keep things going as long as people are here.
Great. Okay. And the other thing, of course, that Coral Sea Marina is involved in, I was speaking to Caitlin Aslett-Collins about this earlier, the raffle that she puts together every year, that first introduction that you had to the Dancing CEOs campaign and Women's Legal Service Queensland. She's still going with that. And the marina has now taken a step up in that.
Yes.
In terms of it's no longer going to be the jet raffle, because Addergold, who she was working for, Addergold Aviation, who were the major sponsor, are, as of this year, no longer the major sponsor, and Coral Sea Marina has taken that slot. So tell me a little bit about that prize and
Yeah. So it's Coral Sea Marina Resort. So the resort's included as well. And essentially the owner has offered a super yacht experience. So the people will arrive via commercial plane instead this time, but they'll be put up at a fantastic villa at
the Cove.
And then they will be taken out to the wonderful White on White on a super yacht. So it's going to be a pretty incredible trip for them, and a really great opportunity for the entire marina resort to be promoted as well. There's also a dinner at one of the gazebos at Coral Sea Resort.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, it should be a really special luxe raffle
experience.
Yeah, we've also got another company within the marina that has put on another raffle, and that is Whitsunday Escape. And they have put on their bareboat charter raffle, and they've made the proceeds all go to Women's Legal Service Queensland as well. So that's another really special thing. And that's a week's charter on a bareboat.
Yeah, information on both of those is available on the Team Whitsundays Dancing CEOs Facebook page. But that Whitsunday Escape raffle is quite an incredible prize. Very generous of them to put forward. It's a brand new boat, first of its kind, I think, in Australia. And you and your friends can go on it for 5 nights, I think it is, and it's really special
experience.
Yeah.
That's what made me fall in love and want to move here.
Yeah. Okay, I'm so pleased at where it's such a great story, because it is an upward trajectory. There's tragedy, but there's so much positivity. There's so much hope for the future, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. I'm excited to see, obviously, you all on the stage on May 31st, but also, the whole journey from there, the walk, and you're getting married soon too. So that's another beautiful thing. And what more you can achieve here. I think this is only really the beginning, isn't it? So
always.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. It's lovely chatting with you.
Thank you. You too. Well, thank you very much for sitting through one of our very first Whitsunday People video podcasts. We really hope that what you listened to or watched meant something to you. We think these women connected to Team Whitsundays Dancing CEOs and Women's Legal Service Queensland have an amazing story to tell, each of them. And we really hope that came across and that you felt that too. I would like to reiterate that if you or anyone you know is experiencing domestic or family violence, or if there was anything that you found unsettling about anything that was discussed, then please do follow the helpline links in this podcast description. I'd also like to point out that because this is a fledgling podcast, we don't have a huge following yet. We are doing this for love. We're not doing it as a moneymaker at this stage. We're actually helping these ladies out. How you can help to get this message out more and thereby hopefully help them raise more money is by liking it, by sharing it, by subscribing, by doing all of those things that help just build a movement and spread the word. So we hope that we can carry on doing this and bringing you more content like this. Thank you.